Okay, good afternoon, everyone, including our special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very special opportunity. Today, we have two special guests. Patrik Schumacher, all the students here are very familiar, who is the principal of Jaha office. And I heard he just leading a special team of Jaha office from all over the world coming to China. I think it's a super trip, right?
420 people.
420 people.
Office trip.
Office trip. It's a grand tour.
15 projects.
15 projects. So he just finished his trip from Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and just arrived in Shanghai. And we're talking about because Patrik Schumacher is our guest professor here. He is also the PhD advisor, and Snow is his student just take the PhD degree 2 months ago. I think it's really a great opportunity to working with Patrik over the years. Actually, he make a lot of lectures every year, one lecture, probably over the past 10 years, right? So we are familiar with Patrik. But I think something new, he also invite one of his friend, Patrik Bojanic. I think I would like to briefly introduce Patrik. Patrik Bojanic is a professor of philosophy. His main area of research include the political philosophy, particularly the theory of institutions and collective action, as well as the violence and ethic of war, Jewish political tradition, and the philosophy of architecture. He also works on the concept of the project and the projective acts. He is co-editor of Peter Eisenman in Dialog with Architects and Philosophers, and of the journal Korean. He is currently the fellow at the TIAS institution, Tongji University, and he's working on the project Victory in the global governance. For us, in this architecture community, he is a vital bridge between our two disciplines. And so we're very fortunate to have him with us today and to offer the philosophical perspective on our built environment. So please join me to welcome Patrik Bojanic. So I think the whole afternoon, we have around totally 3 hours. And I would like to first invite Patrik to make the lecture, and then followed by Patrik. So I'm looking forward to have a discussion after the 2 lectures. Okay? So,
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you, Winding. Thank you, Yuan, and your team, you, and of course, Patrik. I'm here because of him, yeah? Because he is, we can say, last architect, at the end of architect. Well, there is no picture here, and unfortunately I don't like this. But anyway, this is something between English and Chinese. I'm not here to sell you something which you already knew, but try with you to help me to understand how these words function in Chinese. This is my task. Well, why I'm here? Because which kind of legitimation, except I'm friend of Patrik, is this. I'm editor with Snežana Vesnić of this journal. This is the copy end where Patrik wrote the text about end of architecture. And this is now for Philip. Secondly, we published in the same library the book, the PhD, Patrik's PhD, because it's how to say, you will see this is ideal architect or the ideal philosopher, and that's why I'm trying to understand him and trying to understand architecture and this end between architecture and philosophy. That's why why I'm here. And we published his PhD, who was published in German, and I hope you will enjoy, you will understand, first of all, Patrik's engagement in architecture. And I will explain what does it mean for me, ideal architect, and ideal philo-architect or archi-philosopher, we can say like this. I'm in Tsinghua University fellow 1 month. I'm working on victory project. What does it mean, victory, win, how to understand Trump, etc. And I propose that the opposition to be in front of this, if I'm happy to follow your president here. This is projective mind could be opposite to victorious mind. And well, that's why I'm working on project. I'm repeating what does it mean project. I think that architectural project and project as such is the same thing. And well, I will talk here first of all on this. Second, you know, you see that this is the names. I don't care for the names. I like acts. You know, what is behind of these acts? That means I like verbs. I think the acts, verbs are more important than names. Names are complicated and totally problematic. Well, if we can see something behind, and I'd like to propose you, and you will see probably, because I have here Chinese, you will see your behind of your concepts, notions. Well, then I'm all the time, you know, I'm in negotiations, in discrete negotiations with Patrik. We are not the same on the same area, but I hope we can try to understand each other today. For example, autonomy. I don't know, I'm not for autonomy of architecture, but I think that one of the functions of architect is to produce terminology. Okay, let's see, probably during in next 3 hours what we have about this. Then, it's important for me difference between philosophy and theory, because this is philosophy, not theory. I think that theory is, how to say, opium for architects. Philosophy has capability to invent something. In innovation, this is also President word, very important. Innovation or new, we can connect easily with philosophy, but I'm not sure with theory. In AI, in robot, we have theory in him or in her, in it, but we have not still, or we have not yet maybe, this capability for the new. I think that that's why philosophy. I'm not sure that this is good explanation, but well, I'm trying. Then, okay, I said autonomy, I will say more about this. Epistemology. I think that the architectural field of architecture produces some kind of knowledge. That means I hope that exists some kind of architectural act. That it means projective act is eminently architectural. And what does it mean, epistemology of architecture? Well, that could be also one important question. And yes, this is the end of architecture, but let's understand the one architect, I think ideal architect who remains. Well, how we can understand this end? You know, we have so many end in philosophy. We have Adorno mentioned end, but Christian Wolff in 18th century, he mentioned also the end of philosophy. It means end is practically something new, some new beginning or different beginning of something other. Well, here, well, first, I don't know how to situate. We had a problem in a journal. Well, you see this. This is, we accepted this and two fields and the importance of this and not philosophy of architecture because, for example, when I'm, let us say, when I'm teaching this and I'm analyzing the text of architects and philosophers. I don't care for picture. I don't know nothing about architecture. But I think that I'm the best one about this end. And I'm trying to understand architecture. Well, and to push them to understand themselves. Okay, it's impossible to push Patrik because Patrik is the best to understand, to thematize his work and works of the others. Well, but well, we have these possibilities, and well, you see. Second, what is why I'm here? Not well. I'm here. First of all, I think that it's necessary to find philosopher in architect. Why? Because I think that he or she must thematize work. It works, and this is the first, and to understand, to learn how to work with the others. Well, I think is it's for me it's very easy with Patrik, with Peter Eisenman, Kohlhaas, but there are some architects who don't care to produce a thinker. Second, well, this is probably a problem with me and Patrik. I think that this is the mission architect to produce some kind of terminology or eminently architectural language or terminology. Well, I think that conject, project, and concept are totally architectural terms. Okay, you can say no. Concept is a philosophical term. I think if we transform concept in the acts, what we have behind the concept, we will say that this is totally architectural. How to say? Architectural protocol. Let's say like this. And finally, this, yes, autonomy, terminology, and then autonomy. Okay, then. Well, you see, you can read. Well, conjunction is important. That's why conjunction. Conjunction, not disjunction. For me, it's important this junction and the origin of this junction. I try to see how it functions in Chinese. It's different, and that's why this is here. It will be your job to understand how these three words function in your language. Because we are here, you know, we are trying to. Well, you see this. At the beginning, we have only two geometrical protocols or strategy in our life. This is Conceptual or begreifen, greifen, that means to catch something, to take something in, to eat something. This is one, you know, take a look, kid, baby. You see this is, the first idea is to take something from the world. We have a physical world and we have this operation, this mechanism to take something in, to put something in ourselves. This is conceptio. Concipere. The same in generally in all Latin or Slav or Indo-German, Indo-European languages, the same strategy. And we have on the other side, second strategy is this, iacere. This to throw away, to put something outside, to, you know, this is in, out, that's it. And all the magic of our life is this a tangent between in and out. Where is the problem? Because the most important philosophical concepts or most important philosophical strategy is always with this, iacere, with this iectum, objectum, adjectum. There are so many words like this. That means we put something outside of us and try to be in front of it. That means we are in process of antagonism all the time. That's why subjectum and objectum. Project is different story, because when we put something outside, we don't know what is the goal. We don't have strictly object in front of us. In project, there is no antagonism, and this is probably thesis today. We go together somewhere because project is social, concept is individual. Concept is always individual. That means when you say my concept of this pen, immediately started to be social. But generally concepts are not transparent. Well, projective mind, you see, what does it mean? Projective mind means to contrary to victorious mind. Projective mind means to produce something with the others. That's why project is social. To open future, because project opens the future, and to move forward together. Well, this is three ideas: Begriff, notion, conception. In German, we have not second word, we have only Begriff. And now, before, it's difficult to translate notion and concept, because in Roman languages you have notion and concept differently. But now in German you have Begriff and concept. Begriff functions as a notion. Christian Wolff, okay, this is in this book you have definition of concept. Why I'm doing this? Because this is principal architectural words in concept and project. After we have platform, plan, etc., diagram, monogram, etc. For example, I didn't know that Kant, I knew several months ago that Kant used the word monogram, not diagram. And it's very interesting, you know, monogram, how he found monogram and not diagram. Well, here, Christian Wolff, what does it mean concept for him? You see here, Corbusier, he was 21. He said, my concept. In 21, this is the letter to his mentor. He mentioned 3 times le concept. Concept. I have my concept. He said 2 times ma conception, my conception. But he first invented the word mon concept, my concept. And this is very familiar to architects, my concept. Well, Deleuze, la philosophie comme l'art de former, d'inventer, de fabriquer des concepts, ça veut dire the goal of philosophy is to produce the concept. This is only, well, okay, what we have in Christian Wolff. He said, we have a physical object, for example, sun, and the representation of the sun, representation of the sun in my Gedanke, he said, this is in my mind, is Begriff, is concept. And immediately, because he was very clever, he said it's very easy with sun, with physical object, but he said marriage. How to have representation of marriage in ourselves. That means the principal game is here in ourselves, the game between different concepts and the game to produce your position. Well, here we can see the maestro to produce the position. I think why? Because Corbusier, you have to produce, if you have not your position, I don't know why you are here. This is the same I found in Schelling. Schelling was very young. He said, which philosopher has no system and 21, there's nothing. Well, that means you have to produce your position, and that's why you need this philosophical push, let's say like this. Well, now project, this word, if you say yacere, it means to lie, that I lie. Not lie, but probably lie, not lie. Not lying, but laying, you know. And the other one is yacere, to throw away, to throw forward. Well, completely different conception, protocol, stupid word, conception. What does it mean, conceptio? Conceptio means Mary. I hope you heard Mary and Jesus Christ, this story. Mary is in conceptio. Conceptio is pregnancy. Gestatio. Gestatio is to be pregnant, to hold the baby. Gesture, to hold the baby. Yacere projectus is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is immediately moment of project. Projectio. Something, well, okay, generally we can say all this differently. I mentioned this geometry between conception, catch, and project through. We can say that the second conception, you have this in, well, I have to mention this in Talmud idea that we have hit and miss. This is only two strategy, hit and miss, not third. Conject because concept, inject, very good word to destroy Aureli. Because city is not the project, city is conject. Why? Because in the city we have many concepts, many projections. When you are, for example, when you are built something, and you see immediately in Shanghai, in part of the Shanghai, many conject, many concepts, many projects, and you put put something in. Okay, this is now you will start here. Well, I don't know what is the problem is how to because this is your job, this is not my job now. It's very good for me to try to criticize, thematize Western origin of words, of I don't know, because I'm in between many languages, but here I have friends here too. They try to help me, but okay, this is verified with several people, philosophers. Well, I can give you, of course, or you will have this presentation and you will check this. No, it's interesting, you know, connection between Japanese, it's interesting connection with heart, not mind. This is different. Immediately we can, you know, if we accept the position of architect position of philosopher to compare, well, I'm okay. My position is in between the languages. I'm not Heidegger. I don't want to be in one language or in two eventually, in Greek and this one. But, well, okay, that's it. Where is the problem here? This knife or this arm, you Chinese, you can see the arm and knife in this word. How to differentiate aggression of project? Because generally project is aggressive. Because project aggressive, but which kind of aggressiveness? Well, I read in last several months, I read in English and then tried to understand with the other people many military strategic texts, and I tried to understand how you know, you are manipulating with attributes. You are manipulating with quantity. Well, I found that quantity is much more important than quality, and then in concept you have quantity. I can say that Philip is a very ambitious guy, and Patrik also, but this is not enough. Well, you in your language, I think you are manipulating with quantity, and that's why we sometimes can't understand, and it's very difficult to how to say. I can understand, but I can't repeat or something like this. I can't use it. What you well, the problem here is how which kind of aggressiveness we have in project to exclude the others, and why project could be important for us. Okay, this is maybe good, maybe not. Well, what does it mean, architectural act? Architectural act, for example, how to differentiate a platform, program, plan, and project. We have a mess in architects' texts. It's very, you know, in continental philosophy we have also mess, because each philosopher invents his terminology, etc., etc. You have Agamben's terminology, Derrida's terminology, etc. But in analytic philosophy, it's much more simple. For us, I think we need somebody from, it will not be philosopher, but architect who will try to describe what does it mean architectural act. Where is the place of platform? Where is the plan? Where is the project? Where is the gesture? Where is the design? Where is the disegno? Which difference between design and disegno, draw, etc. This is, I think, the task. And well, at the end, when I said conject, where is the position of conject in this imaginary, ideal architectural act? Well, that's it. How to reconstruct all the steps in a work in a Patrik's work. Because he tried all the time, that's why he wrote. He tried all the time to understand Zaha Hadid's act. Well, this is now we have, and now we have one at the end of architecture. Now we have one guy who has capability to understand himself, and that's the new. You know, if you follow Eisenman's lecture, still, you know, he's still active. His idea is to check on to how to say, to mention to the precedents, the origin of each architectural moment, material moment. Well, that is archaeology of architectural materialization. This is Eisenman. Here we have, I think this is a thematization of epistemological act. This is, well, problem of architects, why they are not reading architects. Forget philosophers, but architects. And, well, I think this is, that could be task. Well, I tried to how to say, to argue for this word. I think it's that conject is and, generally conjunction is and I think that and is much more important than or, and I think that and is strictly in architectural how to say engagement or commitment, and I think that this and is strict in China, in Chinese. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
A little bit short, but very deep understanding of some keywords here is putting forward the concept, project, and goes to the conject. I think it's 3 words from the very conceptual, the individual and the subjectivity, where is the concept coming from, and also the concept is kinds of autonomous ways to define the individual. Where is your mind coming from? Yeah, he mentioned also the heart and mind. In Chinese, heart and mind is different. It's really different. The mind is not about the mindness, it's about the thinking, and also the autonomous is mind, is maybe not from heart, but from your mind. So it's a I think from my understanding, maybe I should invite Patrik to analyze this conjecture, because conjecture is more about the predict and from some like collective intelligence to predict or to say something in the future. It's conjecture, but the conject is something like throw together. It's maybe from different individuals, put them together and throw some different decision of mind to the forward, maybe something together. So that is the conjecture coming from. So it's very philosophy addressed. So maybe next I would like Patrik to analyze this very fundamental keywords. What is and, what is conjecture, what is the difference between the concept, project, and conject. So welcome, Patrik. Some feedback first.
Of course. Yeah, no, this is not my lecture yet. Although I could bring out a lecture which relates closely to this. Yeah, it's fascinating, Peter. Thank you for your provocations and reflections. So I do find it quite original, and I think that's the role of philosophy, to challenge us with new concepts, the creation of concept, like Deleuze reflected what philosophy is, and it was very productive for architecture, particularly in phases of transition, where one form of architecture ends, for instance, modernism in the 70s, and something else has to be born. That's when the philosophers join the field, and to help us brainstorm and go to the first principles, to start again, the new beginning after the end. And that's where we need philosophers. And so that's what, when I was a student, I was in the 80s, that's precisely what happened when architecture absorbed the work of the post-structuralists. There's also a revolution in thinking, and somebody like Peter Eisenman brought Jacques Derrida into architecture to collaborate, Bernard Tschumi also with Derrida, and then a very strong connection with Deleuze. So I think that's very important, and I like the triad of, I think it's interesting, concept, project, where you project forward, where you sometimes project into the unknown, and then the idea of conject and conjecture. It's interesting where you say that the city, when projects intersect and come together, there's something maybe nobody has conceived or projected. It's a kind of collective outcome. And but I would say on that one, the throwing together, I can feel the reminiscences of the period of deconstructivism, where we had actually in modernism, the idea was the city is also just a plan. It's just a project. You have Le Corbusier drawing up the city, for 1 million inhabitants, and Hilbersheimer drawing up the city, but Le Corbusier went so far as to draw up the whole built environment of Europe. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this project. It's basically these kind of linear cities banding across Europe. So this vision was broken when modernism and the idea of planning a whole society was broken. And you had the revolutions, the counter-revolution, if you like, against the planned society. And you actually also had it in China, you had it in Russia, you had it in Europe. And that was the period of deconstruction, where the idea was the city is just many projects coming together, and I think there is a thesis, the city is a project, the antithesis, the city is just a confluence, an agglomeration. But I want to do the synthesis. So we have thesis, antithesis, my synthesis. Yes, I do have a position, which is this stage where we can think of the city of just being thrown together is, we have to overcome that and have a new way of bottom-up, intelligent interarticulation and self-organization, but through intelligent individual interventions, which are super sensitive to their context. They do something novel, but not random, not arbitrary. That we have the capacity to do that now with parametricism and tectonism. So that's my synthesis for a new stage of architecture. But I think it's very healthy to go back to first principles at moment of crisis and go into the etymology of words. It's very interesting to watch what are the origins of certain notions we are familiar with. A deep kind of anthropological origin. That's Heidegger started this into philosophy. And I think that's very fruitful. And also to then realize, then you translate a set of concepts into another language to see the roots of the translated words. There's another depth and another set of principles, because as a philosopher we've understood all concepts, the way language grows through analogy, metaphor, analogy, you expand meanings. And these are not arbitrary. Which word you're confronted with something new. Which of your repertoire of words are you using to describe this? Which of the words is now expanding to absorb and inject the new phenomena? If you had used the different words, you will make it comes with different connections. you see different things. So choosing words means you see things, but you also are blind to others who use another word. So I think that's very deep and very important, and I think that's the difference between architectural theory and architectural philosophy. And I think I have to think about it. I don't have my answer. Is my work more architectural philosophy or my architectural theory? But there is a stage when you made the fundamental choices of how to absorb new phenomena, how to react, how to reposition. After the philosophical moment, after the brainstorming, there is the elaboration, the cumulative making it work. And that's when it's more theory, science, theory-led practice. So you cannot do a new philosophy every 10 years. There's moments of philosophy. The 1920s was a moment of philosophy. The 1980s was a moment of philosophy. I don't know when the next moment of philosophy is. But I think we'll probably, that's something we can't predict. That's my comment.
I think it's interesting also discuss about the subjective of the concept because it's coming from individual and it project to the city as a scenario or the urban or rural area could be project to some project, right? To some project. That is like the projection of the mind to some like physical world from the concept. But a little bit difficult to understand the conjecture because if the concept and project in process is not a linear process, it's not a very structured system to project to some projects. For example, when Jaha office, they have a concept. They can project to different country which have the similar style. If you figure out this is a Jaha project, that is not. So it's a kind of projected processes could present the concept. You can see behind the project is there, the concept is there. But what is a conjecture for this kind of project? Can this kind of intelligence could be conject to the whole city in one style? I don't think it's possible because have different concept. Actually, they combine together, to mix together, and to integrate together in the city as a kind of diversity solution, or maybe something should be the project could be project back to the concept. The concept need to have some difference, right? I think this kind of conjecture process is not an individual concept, it's kind of collective intelligence. So I think it's kind of like a structuralism or post-structuralism. I think including Deleuze, maybe they mention such kind of, every object have a kind of intelligence. You can see in the back some process, how to make it. A lot of things could be reviewed, but actually when you're tracing back, it's not a linear process. So maybe the question goes to, from the concept project to conjecture it's a ways to present, but how to present it from the other direction. If we're talking about artificial intelligence, can simulate this kind of individual concept project process. We can generate a city or project by some like concept, right, to simulate this kind of individual subjective process could project to some project, right? But AI can do very fast, super fast, can simultaneously generate different options, or predict or simulate this kind of scenarios in the city. So my question goes to how to analyze this concept from if the computer can replace this kind of human-centric concept it's kind of subjective process. If the subject is replaced by a computer, how to analyze your theory here? maybe a question from, if possible.
No, I can say just something simple. How we can, this is studio, conject, this is studio work. All of us, we have concept or some kind of concept or draft of some concept. I'm talking about studio. We are working together. And we are working on project. No, we are working on conject. Because we invested all of our conceptions of our individual hidden ideas, and then we are transparent, we are public, because project is project because it's public, concept is not public. Then we have many, how to say, this is magic of how to work together, magic of work together. We are producing something which is conjectural, where we have, where we put something on the table which is, we put our concept, we put our, put something ours, individuals, and correct and make something new. This new is conjecture. This is the scene of act, or acting together. We have acting together. This is, you know, if you check the word, for example, very close word. Generally, it was very difficult to differentiate design from project. Design is sometimes they are synonymous. You have what does mean design? Design is origin is diseño. You have something on your head, and you by gesture, by hand, put on the table, put on a paper, try to draw. Well, this is originally diseño, and this first trace is the trace of the concept, and we are not happy because we are in this game between what we have in our heads and what we have on a paper, and this is draft. We are trying to make this bottega in head, and to harmonize what we have in our head. When we are together, when we are in studio, we are process is different. We are all, and that's a little bit stupid to say that the author, author is always co-author, author is always editor, author or chief of the studio, Patrik is behind. Patrik is many people, and that's the this is structuralism, but maybe anti-structuralism, because I'm accepting the existence of many authors who are working together. If my problem is, I'm not sure that this is my problem, this is, I think, yours problem, how to separate, how to arrange these acts because it's better to say architectural acts, not architectural act. Well, you are, when I'm working on Victory, in Victory, we have Trump for Trump. Victory, or not just for Trump, is always in singular. Here, victory is always in plural. This is in Mao Zedong, in President, but always in plural, means it's not enough one victory. And this is the same. many acts are here, and that's why I'm using conjecture to a little bit stabilize this magic of architect, well, as author, as a projector. Well. Patrik, or questions? After. After.
I think okay.
I have a question to the audience because at the latter part of your introductory speech, you mentioned a couple of Chinese equivalents or apparently equivalents to the European terms, and I was just wondering what the Chinese in this room were thinking about these equivalents, and if they have any additional ideas about certain translations in this respect. Is there anyone?
This is most important. Why? Because, how to say, you have to learn from your language, and not to transfer our, our mechanism, our protocols, our syntaxes in your head. Well, that's why it's important. Not translation, but to push us to change something in our structures. That's why. Can you Can you make something through your language, through your structures, not through ours? Because you see the game. Game is always to born, to pregnancy, to born, to in out, Freud, in out. But practically nothing. Very simple. Very not enough complicated to be real. Well, if you want. Well, that's. Would you be so kind?
Maybe yes. Question.
So just a response to this professor. Actually, I'm not familiar with the term, the conjecture. I'm not quite familiar with them. So I'd like to use the invasion to replace this word. Because my background is from architecture and engineering, so in my mind, if we have a concept and this concept is not mutual, we cannot turn it to the physical environment, or we cannot turn into the very good project. It is an invasion. It means we just we just made some assumption, and this assumption may be not very solid. So could you elaborate more about this word?
My question is not this. Question is what, when you are thinking, when you are talking now, you are trying to be in English. The question is it possible for you to be in your language and say something different and work differently? It's possible. This is the question. Not to, you understood? So how these words function in your mind, this Chinese word.
Maybe I
please,
translate
come
it
on.
in Chinese. It's very difficult to understand. 我用中文讲一下我的理解啊，可能可以大家不同的理解啊。因为他讲的是一个概念的产生啊，到从这个概念，我们是通过图，好比大家是这个 drawings 啊，通过图，通过画啊，通过什么方式 去把它投射在一个项目、一个实践当中去啊。这个他作为哲学家，可能跟我们讨论的核心就是你怎么从这个概念的产生到它有一定的自主的独特性，并且能影响投射到一个项目的这个过程啊。这个过程本身是他今天想通过语言学和这个词的结构和我们的思维结构和思维习惯，去决定就语言和这个投射过程产生的一种独特性啊。而这种 conject实际上是代表的是一种投射之后的共识啊，投射之后的一种共识。而 conjecture 其实跟 AI 我觉得我刚才问他的挺有关系，就是它是种推断啊。这种推断可以是基于一种通用知识到表达知识到变成现实项目过程当中的一个过程，但是过程本身就是他认为是一种知识到实践，可能就是哲学到我们建筑的一个可能是 and 啊，是一个和的关系啊，这个和的关系当中的一种集合啊，大概是这样一个基本概念。那个 Snow 是不是也可以中文解读一下你的听到的理解？中文讲一下，大家可能听得懂。We translate in Chinese.
Yeah,
我也是粗浅的一些理解啊，也是说，因为其实像就是用英文的一个思考，我的想可能它可能有时候会偏这种结构性或者是偏线性的，然后中文的这些的一些思考，可能它像是个网状似的，可能大家本身从概念出发的这个点去想一个概念或一个想法的时候，因为语言会对我们思考也是有很大的一个影响，所以从思考的这个点也会很不一样。所以我能理解到的，比如说想问我们从中文的这个角度，会不会就是不太一样的这么一个思考方式？这是我一些简单的一些想法。
就是从概念到 project。
从概念到 project 这个过程，因为受到语言对于思维上的影响，最后他去从概念到 project， 然后到最后的一个映射到不管是城市还是一个大范围的上面，可能都会有不同的一个结果的一个产生。
刚才 Oli Bowman 教授提的就是，因为上面翻译了很多中文啊，包括我们规划、我们计划啊，包括这些图的这些过程和概念，概和念啊，这个念 mind 是念，心是一种念，那个头脑也是一种念啊，这些的过程，问我们中国学生在看到这些，有什么对他的讲的这个概念产生到项目的过程的一种体验啊，所以 Oli Bowman 大概是问的这个意思。有没有同学有回应啊？开始。比较哲学的一个讨论，就是概念的原点到项目原点的产生过程啊。So 我想问的一个问题，他讲到的 conjecture 实际上是一个推测推断的过程啊。只要这个东西可以被模拟，现在都变成 AI 可以做的。其实这个 conjecture 是很 AI 的一个词，但是从他的哲学里其实没有提到人工智能啊。那这个当中的这种机器对于人的主体性的一种挑战，我不知道他有什么回应。So I have a question, because the conjecture is very AI language. There's a lot of words implement conjecture, because the conjecture and conjunction is actually could be similarly replaced by not the human concept, human individualism. It's kind of a human and machine collaborative, conceptual generative process.
yes.
So I mean,
Yes, could be. Yeah.
yeah. So that's the question to you in your theory or in your philosophy. So how to analyze this kind of conjecture for the future, because it's not the human centric. It's kind of human and machine. They work together to generate the concept.
Yeah, but we are doing this all the time. When we are thinking,
Yes.
we are trying to conject and we are trying to separate.
Yeah.
This is the process. I think that this is the machine in ourselves.
Oh.
Yeah.
Human is a machine. It's
Yeah,
cycle.
I think this is the same. Yeah, this is the same. Problem is that what we put. Problem is when we reject from machine, when we are thinking that we are better or on different side. In that case, we are not in position to think. I think. Well, this is we can
To
say
think
easily.
is a fundamental skill of human. Or this
Yeah.
kind of thinking skill is a skill from the machine or skill from the human. That's
Yeah. Machine is part of the studio, you know, with some kind of concept, in plural, concepts. The problem is how to produce with today with one new friend or several friends something new together. I know, you know, there is no or. This is really and, I think. Or you saw, for example, the moment when Melania Trump arrives with the robots. Well, and idea is that robot will replace, transform, etc. But robot, for example, is more human in that situation than all the others in the room. It's better to be with robot than. Why? Because all humanity is already in robot, and if we are rejecting from our humanities, that means robot will solve us, huh?
Yes.
Save us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's very interesting discussion. Okay, let's welcome Patrik coming, because a lot of news coming out recently from Jaha office. Maybe the name of Jaha office will change to some Patrik Schumacher, probably. So we are looking forward to see what will happen in the future, based on the authorship of the office and authorship from the designer all the way to collective practice or leading by Patrik over the years. I think it's super successful, and not just about practice, it's more about the concepts. So I think Patrik last time mentioned a lot about the tectonism, because we always argue and criticize for many years. The Jaha practice a little bit like stylistic, as the co-poesis he mentioned, I think it's around 10 years ago, with the lecture here, which is more about style. And also this kind of style was spreading all of the world by Jaha's office practice, which is totally based on, I think it's kind of transformation from the infinity curvature, which control not only the surface of building, but also including the functions, including the connections, including this kind of style, which reorganize the buildings from not only the spatial perspective, but also from the constructive process. So recent years, Patrik focused a lot to relate this kind of style to the social process, and also including the construction process, including the ways how to generate this kind of form, how to experience this form, how to, from the phenomenological perspective, to experience this kind of buildings. So we're looking forward to some new ideas coming out today, based on discussion of this concept. What is the project? Because there's a lot of scenarios which Jaha office have achieved over the years, and also which will be very interesting this is maybe as a post-Jaha era, Patrik Schumacher, how to announce his ideas. He's talking about the death of architecture, which is a big transformation right now in China. Maybe in the whole world, the same. The industry is under big transformation. So I'm looking forward to have something.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks for everybody to join the conversation. Thank you, Peter, for your comments and reflections. And oops, what's that? I can't address that one.
出现在他这儿。
Oh, okay. It's not.
看错了。
Cancel that. Okay. Okay, now this is not the lecture I will give. I just wanted to give you a few glimpses in. I've been thinking about the relationship between architecture and philosophy, and why architecture, in particular, also from the perspective of metaphor, analogy, and bringing terminology and tools of thinking into abstract thinking, into philosophy, actually originating out of terminology describing spatial relations and architectural relations. So I just want to, okay. Mention this because the moment of deconstructivism was also this. Why was somebody like Derrida interested in architecture? Because when we thinking very generally and abstractly about the world, about society, we're using metaphors. For instance, when we describe social order, we are using metaphors of the spatial order, and it makes sense because society is ordered spatially, always already, through the order of the city, and these became the diagrams of thinking society, the diagrams of thinking also other domains of abstract knowledge. And I want to show that just in response before I show you what the next stage might be. Let me just think. Oh, again, sorry. No, I can't click anything. I don't know why this mouse is not acting. Here. Okay, cancel. Okay. So, wait 1 second. So the deep-seated power of architectural tropes embedded in most general operations of logic and language poses a limiting frame or barrier to innovation. The transcendence of this frame is difficult because the very patterns of conception, clear and distinct thinking, are locked within that frame. So, for instance, so the conceptualizations of the various institutions that call for architectural translation into buildings are themselves already dependent on ancient conceptual architectures that in turn were abstracted from the built architectures through and within which the original formation of these institutions unfolded in the first place. The family, the school, the hospital, the palace, the city. So basically so every brief, if you receive a brief, it will have a list of spaces and diagrams. This already is spatialized. So it's a well-structured list of contents with a series of chapters and chapter headings. There's the composition of the brief into paragraph and sub-paragraphs. These are architectural orders. A large container with sub-containers, singular headings, meaning doors into these, if you like, rooms. The schedule of accommodation is already a series of boxes within boxes and boxes next to boxes on the paper. You think this is just the content, but it already has a spatial order, a traditional architectural order in the very way we're thinking. And that is, so we have here relations of exclusion, inclusion, subsumption. One thing nests into another. One paragraph is a sub-paragraph of an overall chapter, etc. These logics are very simplistic and powerful architectures. They come out of the built environment. So sequences also. You know, in space, they become sequences in thinking, etc., etc. They're then recycled back to us. This is old architecture giving us a brief to generate. The problem is then we are likely to regenerate this kind of architecture. We're then building these chapters as floors or rooms. And that's the problem. And somebody, sorry, I have to go forward. So deconstructivism was about breaking this up. It was a vehicle by which philosophy returned to its root in its architecture in an effort to break this vicious circle of repetition through direct action in space. So we have to, if we continuously live in an order which is only knows nesting one within another, you come into the campus. The campus has a number of buildings. Then you go from into the building, had different floors. It's only one order of logic of ordering, nesting, spaces within spaces, or adjacencies. And deconstructivist architecture has totally new forms of ordering. They force us, we can't use these categories. You can't describe, for instance, our buildings in these terms. Anyway, so that's why we needed the philosophy. And okay, I want to show you, I mean, for instance, the most fundamental operation in any thinking, and philosophy realizes, is distinction. You have to separate. You know, a concept is a distinction. Inside versus outside. Male versus female. Animal versus plant. Your tribe, my tribe. And the distinction is the most abstract move, the most generalized move of any thinking. And it actually comes from drawing a distinction, building a wall, sorting different animal types into different cages, different tribes into different villages, different status groups into different, you know, male, female there. This is where you embody these distinctions, and the concepts are built concepts. And then we are building out, they become analogies, metaphors. So that is the fundamental, profound, deep roots of all thinking. Walls, fences, trenches, demarcating a social identity. How do you fix this? By putting different things into different places. And so there's basically, you have an inside and an outside. And then you also subdivide the inside further. And it's very deep, you know, these are logic diagrams, right? These are set theoretical Venn diagrams. And what is set theory? Is the deepest representation of all logic and all mathematics can be founded on these operations. Enclosure and subdivision. It's like, so, and these were not invented. The form of the city, the bounding a realm, is not something you think first and then do. It's to make separate, you stabilize something. The circular form is the most efficient natural form. If you try to enclose something and make it super long and squiggly, it's difficult to defend, it's very expensive, vulnerable. So nobody invented this. The circle is fundamental, a material necessity. And how do you grow? Series of concentric circles. So the form of the city is a natural crystallization of ordering moves. But then this diagram of concentric circles, in the Renaissance, for the first time when you draw a city, you draw that, but much rigorized. And then this diagram becomes the thinking matrix of many other things, as I will demonstrate to you. Okay. So, when science starts, the science of zoology, where you distinguish different plants, it starts like this. You just put them in different places. It's like the garden, where you plant. Here you plant the tomatoes. Here you have the potatoes. Here you have the chickens, animals, and this is the classification is first of all a physical act. And then it becomes a conceptual reference of that. Then you can stick a label on this. Then you can draw it. So the science of zoology is based on physical classification, physical fencing, then drawing this like the Renaissance drew the city later, and then you get more complicated nesting. And these diagrams are at the very heart of the science of biology, or let's say zoology. And they are architectures, fundamental and profoundly they're architectures. So, and this is nearly the only move we had for thousands of years. Bounding a realm and then subdividing it with basically that nesting logic. And that's also a classification system is nothing but a thinking system. And if you pick up any textbook, any science, the book is a representation of that. It's that bounded thing, and inside it has chapters and subchapters. That's the way you can order, the only way you order a whole science. You know, you have these different subdisciplines, and then the subdisciplines within this, and then different theories within this, and the book content list is structured like this. And that's the most general overview conceptualization. Your map of the science is a simple, like a very simple architecture. And it's like this. And so when you, in the Renaissance, when science is starting, this ordering of the instruments, of categories, it is like the tool cabinet of the handicraft person. This is a sorting matrix. If you go now to a museum, how do you build a collection? You know, the archaeology museum, it's these shelves. They become diagrams. They become filing cabinets. They become libraries. That's the way we think. We're thinking architecture. There's no other way of thinking. Language itself is operating like this. And order is a place for everything and everything in its place. And look at this. Top right. So in the Renaissance, when you have the first proper science and books about certain domains, for instance here, in ethics, the system of virtues and vices. How do you think about it? You take the city plan, because nothing else. You have no other thinking tool than the city map, when you can then kind of segment it, a hierarchy of central and less central, and segmentation, the system of virtues, the system of vices. Can't see. What is the image of the cosmos? When you want to think, it's, again, the city, which nobody's invented. We generated the city gradually, building out from a circle, which is a necessary bounding, the most efficient material bounding, the concentric extension, and then we draw it, and then that's everything we want to understand. Understanding means fitting a domain of knowledge into the city diagram. There's no other way of thinking. That's my challenge here. thinking the cosmos. Center, periphery, upside down also in three-dimensional. So what is this? 1582. It's the memory system. It's a kind of map of all human knowledge. And it's obsessive. They only know one way to systematize knowledge. It's drawing it into the city map. And symmetry and proportion, there are other diagrams. And I don't have that here, but Immanuel Kant is reflecting in the 18th century, a few hundred years later, he's trying to make the map of our mental faculties, the fundamental categories by which we order our thinking. His drawing, I wish I had this here, but it's a classical architecture. It has 4 points. It has 2 symmetry axes. It's complete symmetrical. It has 4 headings. So it's substance, causality, relation, and quantity. 4, and each has 3 subcategories. And that's the logical system of all judgments, all types of thoughts. Fits into a Villa Rotunda plan. And that's his idea of how you know that this is systematic. Systematic knowledge is simply, he wants to have the symmetry axes, and he wants to have under each heading 3 subcategories. It's obsessive. But since up to this time, all architecture, which wasn't thrown together like a crazy village, was that. And this became the only diagram. And that's why it's interesting. When architecture suddenly breaks through this, it's exciting for philosophers because we keep habituated into this logic of containment, of symmetry, of repetition through our architectures. Here it is. I didn't. So this is another of Kant's. Everything in Kant's critique of pure reason looks like Villa Rotunda, let's say, the most ordered of all architectures, the classical architecture. And that's, I think, is very symmetry and completeness as qualities of thought. He wouldn't accept it if it was asymmetric, then it can't be the truth. The truth must be like that. And of course, looking back now, this seems absurd. It's the formal a priori coming out of architecture into all thinking. Anyway, but also, so we have this category of nesting, classification. The other thing we have is network. Even to this day, if you look at any science diagram, it's boxes within boxes and maybe lines connecting boxes. These kind of relation diagram, flow diagrams. Where do they come from? Pathways. So we have boundaries, and then we have pathways, and we can draw them and rationalize them and architecturalize them, and then we get nodes and connections. The whole science, network theory, graph theory, any diagram in science fits into this category or it fits into the nesting category. Can you see the obsession? How much we're dependent on physical spatial logics, which we then emerge. Nobody's designed that. Then we draw and design. This is a city plan, cutting these pathways, and then making a drawing, and then using that drawing as a thinking tool. That's abstract thinking, is totally dependent on architecture. But this architecture wasn't invented. It just emerges, and then we kind of bring it into architecture finally. Look at this. And what are these? They're just networks of pathways. We have nothing else up to recently. So now, that's why I was so excited about. On the right-hand side, these are the two topics. Boundaries, within boundaries, and networks. Usually kind of branching networks. That's Chris Alexander. The breakthrough is this. Nobody has used, very rarely and hardly ever you see these kind of diagrams. But it's extremely important. Some elements might be in more than one subset. Subsets could overlap. Overlap is a mental operation. And networks could be less ordered than grids or branching. They could be more complex, and there could be multiple paths. So that was a breakthrough. These should be very common in science. But since all buildings are like, cities are like this, we didn't have that. And the revelation here is we have to go there with architecture. Social organization is more complex. We have overlap. You can be part of many circles, many competencies, many teams and disciplines. Overlap is a social reality. Let's build this and let's think it and let's diagram it. And so but still, again, space syntax is only based on this. Social network theory, this is sociology when it wants to clarify, summarize. What does it use? Path network. So they have nothing else to go by. Anyway, and I want to bring in, and the whole of mathematics can be founded on set theory. All mathematics we brought back to set theory. What is set theory? It's this. It's architectures. But they're, of course, doing overlap in, Boolean algebra, if you like. Anyway, there's interesting things that systems of language, they all build their own architectures. And there's French. There's that mouse, okay. French, German, Danish, Italian. This means tree, wood, forest. There's no you can't translate these because they have dissected the world differently. So each language makes cuts. The world is infinitely complex. When you put a language, you put in a distinction. You draw a cut here. But each language draws these cuts somewhere else. If they were drawing the same cut, then you can just swap out the label. Tree is Baum, is Tre. But they haven't cut it the same way. So that means literally you cannot translate. That's why it's interesting. How do the Chinese translate? They don't have the same concepts. They have set these distinctions which emerge out of practice, out of routine, differently. That means absolute intranslatability, no matter what you try, because the geometry of the language system of distinction is different. You could classify the animal kingdom in various ways. Amphibian versus reptile versus this. So if you do that in different ways, and languages have done that, you cannot translate. Anyway, so I just wanted to show that there's, the kind of architecture of modernism was already breaking the classical mold. That you allow yourself to organize. If you would look at any social organization of the 19th century, obsessively symmetry. It's crazy. But asymmetric they couldn't tolerate. That means the system isn't systematic. There's something wrong. It's out of balance. It's out of whack. In modernity, we managed to have a social organization which is asymmetric, but it's still nested tree. And we have we tolerate these kind of architecture, we tolerate these kind of institutions. But by the way, in the 70s and 80s you wanted something else, they never have overlap. And that's where we, for instance, this is a typical modernist. You allow asymmetry, but you have each part is separate and internally repetitive. And here we said, okay, why we let them fuse? We have these zones of overlap and interpenetration, and no longer repetition, but gradient fluidity. This is a very old project. Anyway, so this is, then you jump to something like this. Suddenly, instead of set series, circles within circles, or even just overlapping circles, you have now degrees of belonging, separation, fusion. How much do these two are in one group? How much are they separate? And so basically, set theory becomes fuzzy logics. The boundaries are open, they're blurred. They are both, you have here in these diagrams, you have both overlap and fuzziness. You can be in many sets at the same time with different degrees depending on your centrality position. So there's a much more intricate and sophisticated representation of some logic, some order. And you should order complex social environments like this with more repertoire. But we still have an a priori. We don't do random things, that's not order. But now we're not only doing nesting with sharp boundaries, we're doing overlap, interpenetration, negative Booleans, and we're doing it not with sharp, but with degrees of belonging. And as you know, fuzzy logic was required to deliver, for instance, something like pattern recognition. A lot of AI operations, logic used to be sharp, Aristotelian logic, set theory. You're either an element or not. You're either a subset or not. Complementary, etc. And this logic, this mathematics, was running against the wall when it came to certain capacities. And fuzzy logic, everybody understood, allowed us a huge leap forward in technology. All pattern recognition is fuzzy logic based. And just as an example, this means this logic is superior, is more sophisticated, and therefore I want to build. We should live in this logic. Architecture has to become fuzzy logic. That's the project, let's say, of, and also like this radical idea that you not have one pattern and another one next, that you have multiple reference system operating on the same substrate, on the same logic, on the same audience, on the same space. That's a dramatic increase of information richness and power of ordering. Because when you put your finger in there, you could be, if I'm here, I'm in several places. I'm in the circle, I'm on that squiggly line, I'm on XY pavilion, I'm in simultaneously placed multiple times, and that's powerful. Rather than having to choose, I'm either here or there, and I have only one set of systems, I'm only part of one system, and I have to choose. No, you don't have to choose. Layer them in. That's also when you write a text, when you describe a society, when you describe a science, you can layer it in. It's not that you have to make a choice and have only, but also you can live like this. The city can be like this. The space can be like this. The architecture can be like this. So, and in the city, it's like this. People living, this is a map, it's a certain territory. There are different populations living there. Some populations always go to the local village. They never go to the city. They only know they're close to here, here, here. There's another group of people, white-collar professionals. They never go between here. They don't know. They only know where they are relative to this. So these two populations have different maps of reference, different connections, different relations, and they exist and overlap in the same space. So it's a social reality. But our diagrams, our architectures, they're asking us to choose. They're asking us to only impose one order, but we should have multiple simultaneous orders. So this idea of simultaneity. Anyway, so these are the kind of things I wanted to bring in. I had another lecture prepared, but because of the challenge of architecture and philosophy, architecture and the fundamental principle of thinking and of logic, and that we can expand logic from a simple Aristotelian logic to a kind of probabilistic and fuzzy logic and a multi-reference logic, a complex network logic, etc., rather than just grids, and that this is why. You know, and Deleuze, for instance, was interested when he talks smooth versus striated space. Striated space is the hardline distinctions. And he said, no, we want smooth. We are more or less in many places, and we're shifting gradually from one to the other. That's like soft logic, that's fuzzy logic. And so the philosophers came in to help the architecture to expand our thinking, and then we make it manifest in the world. But the philosophers were interested in architects, because here they can basically help us break up old dysfunctional logics, old dysfunctional philosophical thinking, and expand our mind. Because the mind is a collective mind which comes out of practice. It's not all here and then we do it. We are reflecting, we are absorbing, we are abstracting and learning, and then reapplying. That's why, you know, basically you could say, yes, there are these metaphors, begreifen, grabbing, conceiving, you know, grasping means understanding. These are etymological kind of roots. But I'm showing the kind of physical, spatial, architectural roots. Because the language evolves in the built environment we construct, which is always a constructed environment, never a wilderness. A constructed environment means it has always already classified, distinguished, and connected the different domains and elements. Anyway, that's my pitch on that one. And this is the kind of the opposite of this order is not chaos, but sophisticated, multi-layered, fine-tuned simultaneity of many orders. That's the pitch. Thank you.
Very interesting. I think Patrik actually is highlight his speech from the deconstructionism, which is actually to talk about I think this concept, what is inside the concept. He's talking about what is the inclusive and exclusive of the concept. What is the concept coming from, which is a subdivision of the elements inside the exclusion, which can generate different kind of and project to a different kind of logic. This kind of logic could be diagrammatic, represent in different ways. Actually, this kind of representation can mention from zoology. Maybe it's kind of diagram showing the logic of the animals, how they put in the zoo, and actually also including the orders and including a place for everything and everything in the place, which is maybe a mapping process, but the mapping or this kind of diagram represent a kind of logic. And the logic is initial concept to tracing the concept in the ways to present it. And maybe it's kind of abstract process. It's kind of abstract process is a conceptual process because it's kind of abstract machine which could analyze a very complicated logic, right? And I think the difference between the constructivism and deconstructivism he mentioned is including including the symmetric, including the asymmetric, and also he introduced the consciousness or the unconsciousness. This kind of logic could be make decision by different human mind. This kind of mindness can guiding this kind of logical process to present into a project. I think that is interesting. This kind of diagrammatic thinking actually is some pre-digital, I think, including pre-Peter Eisenman's research, which is quite the starting point of modernism, because this kind of abstractness is super important to highlight what is inertial logic to be an architecture. Architecture here is kind of framework, right? It's kind of a framework of thinking, it's kind of a framework of concept, and how to project this kind of concept into the project. I think is also mentioned the first lecture today, which is super interesting. And also Patrik mentioned about this kind of the field. I think it's maybe the field is kind of party. It's kind of it's not the Poche part. It's party is kind of address the subject into the space. It could be like different options, different result, because you can put it in different system. Yeah, different system is different field. It's one field can including different systems. So that is super interesting. From this kind of abstract process, can represent, and or he mentions articulate your concept into project making process. So that is, I think we can achieve, which is the highlight today. And Patrik is also, I think, feedback to the first lecture about what is concept. I think from Patrik's conceptual making process, which is ontological of the architecture, is kind of abstract thinking, is kind of diagrammatic thinking. And also this kind of thinking, how to make a complicated design, how to a design or physical making process or project making process coming out is based on different logic, including the drawing as kind of logic, including maybe the economic investment is kind of logic, maybe the spatial experience is kind of logic. I think it's multi-layers, I mentioned. It's multi-fields, multi-layers, actually, how to introduce a designer into this kind of conceptual projective to the project process. I think today, in the context of this two lectures, I think it's super. And I think we still have some time. I would like to, anyone put 2 chairs or 3 chairs here? 2 chairs maybe. A dialogue between, a dialogue between Patrik and Peter today. And I think it will be interesting to talk about its fundamental philosophy and architecture, and maybe the philosophy and the design, and how to make a design is kind of a process. It's kind of, yeah, sit in front, please. Yes, we have microphones.
So, okay. So, I just wanted to add something to clarify further. So, the philosophers were also at the same time realizing we keep falling back into the old ordering patterns. Also ordering our thoughts. If you make, for instance, a list of contents of for your book, sometimes they are very elaborate. If you look at the content list of Kant's work or Hegel's work, there's a very strong, super elaborate nesting hierarchy. I don't have that here, but it's literally 7 levels deep. with the bizarre obsession of having the sub-chapter numbers on each level symmetrical. But also it is in this sense, it's hierarchical and not pure sequential. But when somebody like Derrida comes in, they also want to get rid of this order of the book. And so, for instance, they're experimenting with text where you have a main text, and then you run a kind of marginal column of text in parallel. So how do you read this? You shouldn't know. There isn't that chapter and subchapter and that sequence, that hierarchy and first and beginning, middle, end. No, you could flip. There's relations, but two separate stories, and you should make connections. This was also when the internet came up, hypertext. And if you look at Thousand Plateaus, Deleuze-Guattari, of course, in the end, we can't reinvent the book physically so easily. You know, but what they should have done, they should have a box of loose sheets, because they want you to jump around, reshuffle, jump as you like, read from the back, and make any connections. And they also said, use that book, it's not a complete story. You pick pieces and then you apply them to different things. The meaning is in the connection you make, and everybody makes different connections. So you can see there's this idea of overcoming in philosophy, and the physical artifact is a limit. And similarly, Foucault was, when he was looking at certain social institutions like the health system, he wrote the book on the clinic. It's a building type. When the hospital first emerges, and when you draw a line and you separate healthy and sick and categorize different types of diseases, and you know, you have a clear distinction between patient, doctor, nurse, and he was looking at this similarly with the penal system and the, let's say, law and order system, the way buildings, their boundaries and the machinery of the building, also something like psychiatry, is fundamental for the operation of the discourse. And when he coined this frame, which I loved and picked up, he said, discursive formations. It's not only the terms and subterms, the terminology, the typical inferences, the ordering, because you can write, you take a subject and you can make a classificatory system, try to map the system of terms. No, he said, it's actually a discursive formation includes the buildings, includes the tables, the shelves, the system of drawers in which you come, how you processed as a patient, you classify, there's these categories, you filled out, you put into this lot, then there's somebody else. So the discourse is dependent on all these machinic operations, on these shelving systems, filing systems. We know it now. And what is happening in the computer? It is an analogical transference of all this stuff. What is Microsoft? Operating systems. It's a filing system. It's a bit like the Renaissance ideal city, the map from the physical city into a drawing of the city, into a map of the system of virtues and vices. That's similarly from the language, the filing cabinets into Microsoft, and this is we are still shackled by these.
I have some question. I think Patrik is very interesting. Describe this kind of machinic process, which is to me, it's very materialism, because he mentioned about this logic it's from elements, it's from the logical relation of these elements, and how to project the logic into these elements. I think it's a very material. It's very materialism. But I mentioned something.
If you have scrolls, endless scrolls.
Yeah. But
It's
I have a
different
question.
from having a shelf with books. And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. A certain amount of certain philosophy with a certain level of complexity is only possible through writing and then through printing. So somebody like Hegel could not exist without a library. With the works of Christian Wolff, the works of Kant, the works of Descartes or Leibniz, his brain, together with his shelf, set of books, that human-machine cooperation, Kant can write because he can go there and pull this book and page and then quote and connect and list. So he's part of a discursive formation, which is very material.
Very material.
Very architectural. Because, how do you order that shelf?
But I want to challenge it a bit from this perspective, because it's very material, right? You mentioned the elements of books, the knowledge from the library, because knowledge already in the library, you just pick them, assemble them, and to generate some new ideas. So that is very machinic, very like AI, what is AI doing? Data set, frameworks, and also the algorithm to generate. But my question goes to, what is human? I think to analyze a human, this kind of conceptual process is not a very physical or material, logical making process. It's some instinct with no reason, just something emergent from your mind with no logic.
But the point of this is this. Every philosopher recognizes that, for instance, thinking, Dennett had this wonderful phrase, we can't do much with our bare brains. You need to first upload a lot of apps into your neck top. And these apps are through language, through learning, and literally, if you let the kid run wild, it's not going to be recognizably human without language, without thinking. So we have this huge sponge, this huge supercomputer, but we function only with all these systems of order, architecture, language, where you can hook something to something, and even when you think yourself, you do language independent. And therefore, if the world was, people with a very simple language, in a very simple society, they have only a few words, and the combinations of these words, that's what they can think. They can't think anything else. They can think what we can think. Simply they cannot. There's no chance to expect them to think something which isn't within their language system.
I want to challenge it a bit.
And so we are not isolated. We are functioning as we operate in this infrastructure of language, filing cabinets, now iPhones and reference systems. That's the way we function, we think, and we can kind of mirror some of that. But we can do very little with our bare brains. Euclid, the science of mathematics, you literally need paper, pen, ruler, compass, and writing to develop that competency.
So that's a fundamental question. What is a concept? How to generate a concept? What is a human concept? I think
It's a cultural product of cultural evolution.
I not 100% agree on Patrik, because something missing, because human is not a machine, because based on this kind of what is AI is doing, but I think still something missing here is what is a concept, because when the concept generates, we have some talent designers, although we are coming from the same school, reading the same book, we know the same language, we even though we work in the same office, but still we have some talent concepts. So I want to analyze, maybe philosopher can help us analyze. What's the difference between the talent architects or talent designer and very knowledgeable designer. Is there any difference between this kind of? Because the knowledgeable designer can know anything you mentioned, the logic, the diagrams, libraries, everything. All the elements, we know them. But the talent one can reassemble in different ways. Is there anything missing in this kind of conceptual general process?
Concept.
Are you materialist?
Must be. First, I have several moments here, and I will answer. About this, I think you are talking about new concepts. How new concept is possible? Yeah? You can say like this. You mentioned, I hope it was one experiment when we presented Cora journal in Harvard, and Sarah Whiting asked the audience, does anybody know the book, The Choral Work, Derrida Eisenman? It was just one hand. Well, what we have in this book, if you remember, we have one pseudo concept, which is chora. We have ideas in Plato. We have ideas, and we have material copies of these ideas. Well, we have an ideal architect and architect. And the drama or theater in Plato was intuitive guy, and he said that there is some kind of drama where this transformation of idea in material is possible. And this place, which is not the place, this space, which is not the space, is chora. For us, today, this is space. And for Aristotle was hile, was material, not, well, and we copy our frame of this. That means that this is the new concept. I don't know how, well, talent or genius, I don't know, but okay, what Eisenman and Derrida worked? They wanted to show this space, show this chora, and project something visible, which is impossible. Huh? How to produce, how to make space visible. Well, this is the new, I think. This is new operation. They found something new in Plato, and they tried to do something, well, as Patrik said, to one abstraction materialized, well, to make it visible. I don't know how to do this. Probably, I think that this is, something genial here in your presentation is this cut language and this distinction, this, how to say, interactions, which is not interactions between the languages. And you made it in practice 1 hour ago when you started to talk in Chinese to, what does mean the words? You are using the words are projects. You are started to talk in Chinese to provoke the conceptual theater in the heads of Chinese here. You too, huh? That was the brilliant, the moment. But English doesn't work. It's beautiful, huh? Okay, something more. Ontology of architecture. This is brilliant. I hope it will be new book. But ontology of architecture or architectural ontology. Okay, there are some problems here. What you want to do? I mentioned epistemology of architecture. You said ontology of architecture. Means what connects object, or what connects architectural acts, or what connects ontology is some kind of connection, conjunction, if you want. Anyway, okay, that's the just I'm mentioning you. Okay, I will check on your place now immediately Foucault, because this is classification. We have already two huge classification in last 50 years. This is Foucault and this is Latour. You have collections of objects, etc., etc. You are doing something different, but it's necessary to show what is this. And I think this is the genius or talent who is trying to do something different, who is trying to make something different. Well, that's it. This is the violence, aggressiveness to do something different, but that's it. Plus, here, I think this is newest, which is not just generation, regeneration, etc. There is something stupid in news. You know, sometimes. Well, okay. At the end, this synthesis. You mentioned this. Yeah. I don't like this. Okay. No, this is a German moment in you. Oh, okay, you.
Temporary synthesis.
Yeah, temporary. Yes, maybe. Yeah, or well, you see this synthesis. It immediately. This is Hegel. This is totality, etc., etc. If you, when you start to be new one, if you put the other word, and if you, because it's impossible to be Hegel today, but you can do this on your way, and that will be new words. This is, I think, that was the question.
Yeah, I think the dramatic innovations in culture and in thinking, they rely, you can't get away from just breaking rules and this mutation. It's the same in the system of life. You generate new through mutation as well as recombination and certain algorithmic processes. And I mean, in the 70s that became clear, in the 80s in particular, the idea of abstract machine is this, that you don't try to, through clear and distinct logical steps to generate something new, but through breakage, through mutation, through random recombination, hybridization, these kind of moves, which and working with graphic spaces, with graphic operations, like with automatic writing, surrealist moves, and that was the idea, that you do mindless, because if you're mindful, all you get is carefully reusing. You're too careful, so it's too much repetition. You have to be reckless and mindless to generate something. That's the role of artists, the total non-conformists, which don't even have purposes. And one thing in which I recently gave the lecture at the AA and the idea of architecture and progress, for instance, modern architecture needed that mutation chamber, that radical rupture, that non-rational, non-deductive process of abstract art, which is non-mimetic. You don't know what you're doing. Pure freedom of drawing lines and splashes and interventions into a free space, the unlimited canvas, not controlled by mimesis, not controlled by sujet, not controlled by some kind of order of preconceived, but open. And then you look at it and say, that's to design, that's creativeness. This is a drawing of an architecture. It's a division of labor as well. Piet Mondrian or Malevich created, they didn't design it, they didn't have things in mind. They were mystics, by the way. And then somebody comes on and says, wow, Piet Mondrian does this. He's just, doesn't know what she's doing. He has no words. He's just an intuitive iconoclast. And then Van Dersburg comes and says, wow, this is this can be the modern architecture. We've been looking, we've been searching for in which style we should build for 100 years. I can see this. But he couldn't imagine it. It had to be that random act. And then he hands it on to Rietveld, and we have the style, we have Eichmann to Mies, and we get modern architecture. But there's no way that you could have had modern architecture without Mondrian, for instance, or without abstract art. And that's this pure mutation. Actually, that's why philosophy borders on poetry, somebody like Heidegger. So what is poetry? Poetry is drawing things together, using words in unusual ways. It's always metaphorical, it's always analogical, it's being very creative and inventive. You don't invent totally new words, abstract words, although it also sometimes happens. In science, you have to continuously bring in new, from different language. You bring it from Latin, you bring it from Greece. You have something new. There's no word for it. You bring it, but it's also very productive. But this doesn't come with much connections, because people don't speak Greece. But if you use words you have and connect them in strange ways, you make new connections. And could that be? Could this be like that? You know, that's the moment, and that's where philosophy and poetry intersect. And that's like art, abstract art into architecture, poetry into philosophy. I mean, if you look at Heidegger, a lot of this is poetry of some kind, but instrumentalized, then handed on or worked through by himself. And he looks back at the deep roots of language and tries to then kind of see that language evolves through these metaphorical expansions of terms. Even when you had the Chinese, there was a translation of what the word means now, what originally meant. You can see there is a connection, but it's not necessary. There could have been other words which could have brought forward. And that is the thing, that's why I say that's the evolutionary process. That's the new is ultimately always mutation, you know, suspension of rationality.
Okay, I think this is a point, because I think today the topic is, I think it's a concept, right, forward. And also Patrik mentioned about mutation and reassemble the existing knowledge, existing elements to create certain kind of the concept. So I think in this kind, we make a discussion. I just invited Mara Kapo and Jeffrey Huang from EPFL, contribute to the Architecture Journal in China, and Jeffrey Huang mentioned how to beyond the mutation. It's just a topic on that. We will make some discussion last year in Venice Biennale about this topic. I think that is a key point, because the architecture concept is something different, I think, beyond mutation, because it's the example of the concept from the architectural perspective is not just about the existing knowledge, existing elements, because something, what is new, and also what is new concept?
Let me help you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say architecture before Zaha, I'm exaggerating, but it's even with Niemeyer, who seems to be very fluid. Anything you do is ruler and circle. Hard line, ruler and circle on a flat paper plate. That's architecture. And you can imagine if you stay there, the world will still look like 1960, nothing more than that. It was already a big move that before it was ruler and circle, but you have to end up with something symmetrical. Big shift, ruler, circle, but you could go anywhere, but only with ruler and circle. Zaha comes and says, I have a brush, and I'm doing this, and the line is swelling and putting and does all sorts of things. It's not a compass, it's not circle segments. And then I smear and fade. But what I'm doing here is an architectural drawing. What? How? That's the breakthrough, that's the mutation. But then it starts working with that. Winning a competition, designing something, instrumentalizing, showing the advantages. because you can do so many more moves and absorb so many trajectories, irregular side conditions, etc., that you can actually with this do a better functioning architecture. And fading, you can have smooth transition, not just here's blue and there's black, or here's white and here's gray, zone A, zone B. No, everything in between, in the fading effect. Socially as well, the difference. So you can be superior, you can be more subtle, more agile. So beyond mutation is working through and making it real, not just this is an architectural drawing. Well, you say, you joke. We keep going using circle and compass, rule and compass. No, say, this is an architectural drawing, and here's the architecture. And we won against all of you using, and you all go home, and we win now all the competition. And we built them, and the places are vibrant and beautiful and loved. So something like Baku is the result, or Dongdaemun. These are the result of that. That is beyond mutation. Is, you know, it's like the organism. The organism has to live and thrive and reproduce and change the world, eat up everything else after the mutation.
So,
Win in the struggle for life.
Patrik, any?
Here also, you shown the one picture of the Filarete, this city, Sfortunato city. He wrote one Tractatus, very important, in, of course, Renaissance, and he compared the architect with a woman, but pregnant woman. Conceptual, yeah, that's it. This is most important. How to, well, this is probably several operations. This is, you know, we are talking. How to say? We are talking about something which is not appropriate to hear, to your language. That's why I insist to.
I think you mentioned the operational. I think operational process is kind of machinic thinking. Like Peter Heisman is doing some operational diagram. I think the operational diagram is a process to making some new ideas. But the fundamental starting point from this operational process is something pre-exists there. It's like already this kind of systematic structures already there. How to operate this system? That is, so the operational process is already exists. You just play with it. So that is inside already existing concept. The concept already there. What you can operate is inside the system. What I mean is the system itself has some problem. The system itself could be not so rationalized, generate.
Okay, this is first Patrik Luhmann. Exists something in system which can produces something different, spontaneous. This is one possibility. We have Snežana, who is editor, as me, co-editor of this journal. We in Revista di Estetica we arranged the journal this year, at the beginning of this year, about new, and we had a problem. You know, nobody can write about new. How to write about something which is not written? Well, this is folk, but well, I'm not. How to say, for Filarete, for his the process is to protect the something in your stomach, in that case pregnant woman, to try to time, you know, because this is concept must be you know, it's growing up all the time, then to born, the moment when you start to the first gesture with the hand, how to put something out. Well, then you immediately say this is not it. That means negation. The function of negation is this. Well, when you mentioned Deleuze, I was thinking it will be great to give every year to students to read this text, Deleuze text, What is Creative Act, but with task to write something, you know, in Chinese, the same, not this, not repeat. Well, how to write something? Well, that will be a question. I must say this because that will be useful, you know, for you. It's not. What does it mean to repeat Deleuze? Now nothing, you know. How to change somehow? Well, mutation, repetition, etc. Come on, Patrik.
Well, I mean, not repeat, but you need to, yeah, we need to understand, appropriate, and then make the next move. So Deleuze was, for instance, this great mutation machine, but he wasn't then doing the next step, rewriting the system of the social sciences, for instance. But that needs to also happen. As I said, it isn't enough of saying, claiming that this is no architecture. You have to do it. You have to develop, you operationalize, you have to develop the workflows, and the buildings has to
yeah. Most important word, next.
Yeah.
Most
Hey,
important.
and in a strange way, I mean, someone like Luhmann, although he was well formed in through the 60s and the 70s, he reinvented himself, and I think the injection of post-structuralism of the work of Derrida, Deleuze, and so on, as well as a new kind of stage in cybernetics and the biology of cognition, the autopoiesis concept, he reinvented his social science and rewritten everything. And and that's important, that part. Don't expect it from Derrida, don't expect it from Deleuze. They're the agents provocateurs. But somebody can do it, has to do it, will do it, and that's, for instance, somebody like Luhmann, maybe Latour, maybe Habermas. They're then the great kind of, you know, it's not the end of meta-narrative, not the end of grand narratives. So it's not the destructive act. And then what? It's the next stage. And I think that's my role as well. So I've been grown up, I was big eyes in the 80s. And then in the early 90s, the explosion of dramatically new, I mean, deconstructism is so outlandishly, extremely innovative. And then the early pragmatism, the folding, was even beyond belief innovative, with suddenly NURBS and blobs and splines and fades and swarms, delivering that, running with that, understanding that, and operationalizing this, and delivering a new city, a new life, a new society with that. That's the task. So, and it's a different cast of characters required. You know, you can't expect Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid herself, or Wolf Briggs to do it.
Yeah, I think that's another topic, but I think it's also related to this topic.
Of course, I respect these giants of these mutation machines.
Yeah, but mutation
But then it's not enough.
Yeah, I think the mutation era time may be already ended.
Well, there's a cycle. There's cycles of innovation. I think the huge mutations of the 1920s, if you look at the Bauhaus, the early Bauhaus, you have actually artists and sculptors and experiments and formal research, the curriculum there was, and you know, using and generating turning abstract art into potentials. And then at the end of the 20s, who is left? There's only the architect, industrial designers, urbanists, and the rest of modernism. Where are the artists? They've played their role. Because you can't redo this every...
Yes,
You have to, you know, it's this kind of surge of experimentation.
Yeah.
So and then 60 years of, you know, rolling out.
That is a point for Jeffrey Huang, who mentioned, put forward beyond mutation, because what is experimental? And also he mentioned what is new, and what's the new horizon, or maybe the mutation is a certain kind of social process based on certain kind of philosophy, maybe from the modernism all the way to structuralism or post-structuralism. I think it's in the context of the social process, which is modern era, because the social productive process, it supports this kind of mutation. I think mutation is kind of industry in architecture discipline, including the office style.
I mean, the same
big
as,
office,
I
right?
mean, look, the
Extra
same
houses.
as, let's say, the early protagonists of the early folding and so on, the Marcus Novaks, the Greg Lynn's, the Lars Spyberg, where are they?
Exactly.
You know, you need to, but you cannot do every 5 years something new, then you never do anything. So these are the cycle innovations.
So the question
Yeah.
goes to, because you put forward a lecture talking about the death of architecture, and the similar Wang Shu, Professor Wang Shu in China, who also mentioned the death of architecture discipline. So how would you like to address?
No, I mean, that's the frustration where I said, you know, we have this, first of all, there's this transformation of society. I've talked a lot about this. The computational revolution, everything becomes dynamic, fluid, globally connected, reprogramming the robots, you know, everybody R&D, no physical labor nearly, and it's all creation and invention and beautiful dynamism. And somehow the architecture which we're generating should be making this new city. And the problem is why, but we're not breaking through. Things are kind of paralyzed. They're locked up, and also in the discourse. And that's where this end of architecture comes from, because it's the kind of cycle of innovation has been stopped in its tracks, and a lot of, not here of course, but a lot of universities and schools of architecture have not participating in this, and they are don't looking at the frontier and looking at the great projects and the great protagonists and firms, and they're now firms. You know, yes, a small studio starts modernism. Mies van der Rohe with a small group of 3-4 architects, but delivered SOM in the 1950s. Similar, deconstructivism in architecture show, you know, Zaha had 5 people, Wolf Briggs had 7 people, Libeskind had 3 people. There were small nothing studios. Look at where we now. And so that is, but the problem is the discourse, the academia, we need critical engagement. We need to be critiqued and pushed and helped along, and we need to discuss in conferences, in papers and PhDs what we're trying to do. But all these conferences, papers and biennales, they look somewhere else. They don't look at the frontier, they look at the margins, they look at countries left behind, populations left out. They want justice for, and you know, they look only at climate and sustainability, which we already have incorporated, but this is not the urgent questions anymore. I mean, we need to understand what we're going to build and how we're going to create a city, and not talk only about how much it will cost, presuming that we know what to build. So that's the end of architecture for me. That the discourse, so we're still doing it, but nobody shows our work, nobody publishes our work, we're not invited to any show, we're not, you know, nobody's discussing our work, I mean, exceptions are you and a few people. The rest of the discipline is not participating. And if the discipline or the profession moving forward and trying to change the world, for instance, through firms like us and Foster, but because we don't have a critical discourse, Foster can outmoded things. There's no critique, no discourse, no comparison. We're all equally fallen, neoliberal, commercial, and the critics want to talk about a small, nice village extension, a little cultural space, open and human-centered, a little this and that. These get the prizes. Irrelevant. Some kind of artistic, kind of nice little honest and kind of material and socially conscious little this and that. They get the prizes, attentions, the media. And what's really going on is we're basically bereft of discourse. That, to some extent, the sadness is the profession is becoming a craft. Meaning, it's more like a vernacular. Nobody discusses. It's no discourse led. We do whatever we like because they've already written us off. We don't talk about our work. We just talk about the carbon costs in a professional context, not what we should build. It's totally getting everything upside down if we're talking about the carbon costs of everything and not what we should build. The logic, the order, the scale of the city, the mixity, all the huge number of potential decisions we should make. We never discuss them. We only presume that what we're doing is what we've always done, except we're doing it for carbon neutral. I mean, that's the architecture, simply that.
Okay, I think a materialist, you can see Patrik is very, so that is the real Patrik. Actually, for many years, he organized a special panel discussion in the Venice Biennale party. As you remember, huge discussion on that. The pioneer architects, I think, make a lot of discussion on that. So today, I would like to open to the floor. If any question, would be appreciate to put forward to both Pato and Patrik. So, Ollie, would you like to?
Yes, thank you very much for this wonderful afternoon, first of all of you. I'm happy that I could eventually learn from some deeper motivations about your work. Although at the end I recognize some of the diatribes I've read before, but most of your time you spent on explaining a deep motivation for your research and sustained by very interesting visual materials. And I think that's a great pleasure because, you know, I've been following the work of your office maybe for a couple of decades already, and its formal evolution, so to speak, of the oeuvre. And I'm also following the discourse, you know, the op-eds that appear every now and then. So that's the rhetorical evolution, but I was not so aware about the philosophical agenda behind all this. And I think you explained very well that this all boils down to a kind of a motivation to emancipate architecture, right? It's, let's call it an emancipation. So when you describe the history of architecture as something that, you know, there is, of course, there is a lot of variety, but there's also a very grounded, almost like intrinsic order that was very hard to overcome. And then you explain how you try to overcome. You just a few minutes ago, you mentioned this element of no longer the typical architectural tools, but the brush, right? So the brush opens a certain option to emancipate what architecture can be. And I think that is very inspiring, and also helps me to reconceive, let's say, my perception so far. So thank you very much for that. That's already very helpful about this afternoon. But coming back to the question of the philosophical question about the way you put things in terms of the philosophical terms that were introduced by Petar very, very nicely. I think also in your speech, you rely on a certain European way to describe these grounds, right? These deeper logic of architecture. And you mentioned Kant, you mentioned a couple of other philosophers, and they have a certain way to seize, to capture how this works in the mind, right? How we develop our mental schemata to before we can actually make architecture. Maybe that's something that already starts from childhood onwards, right? Maybe even before we have language. As a toddler, we already learn these kind of deep concepts. And I've been in China for many years by now, and one of the fascinating experiences I had over the years is that in the Chinese language, it becomes more and more clear to me that these schemata are working differently. And you mentioned a couple of Chinese translations, but just a translation cannot be enough to capture how this works in a Chinese mind, if I may say so. And that's why I'm so curious how actually people here in China can learn from you, right? So you have your historical materials, you have your rhetoric, you have your way of putting things, but does it really appeal to people who, for the last 20, 30 years, come from another kind of evolution, right? Where language and architectural education, etc., works. So to conclude, Philip mentioned the question of talent. So if a European talent tries, it's not just building knowledge, right? There is something that goes beyond just knowing something, not knowledgeable, being knowledgeable. There is something to do with all these ideas. And you can say this is the moment of talent, deciding what you can do. And I wonder how this, in the Chinese context, how this element of talent could work here, where there is a different kind of evolution in each creative's individual creative development. So it's a question to you, but actually also a question to the audience, because, and maybe also a question to Professor Yuan, how he sees that. So I'm thanking you for the wonderful speech, but also I'm triggered by asking maybe quite difficult questions. Sorry about that.
Yes, I think Oli is very, I think the significant thing he's doing, he learned Chinese very well. I think could write, speak. How many years? Maybe 4 or 5 years?
I lived in China for 8 years.
8 years. But your language is perfect. So I think the ways of the language is totally different. You mentioned streamer. It's kind of, it's also related to concept. The ways of Chinese conceptual emerging process is totally different to the Western. I think it's from the philosophical perspective. That's the point when we mention about this kind of this talent or emerging ideas coming out. The Eastern culture and Western is totally, I think it's a totally different process. So I understand the diagrammatic thinking. I think the streamer process Patrik analyzed in his speech, but I think the ways of the Chinese philosophy, I think it's not you needn't learn everything. You needn't know too many language, too many knowledge. Too many knowledge will be useless. That's the kind of philosophy, because they believe in this such kind of emergent ideas, it's an emerging concepts that is much powerful than rather than you know a lot of things. This kind of logical process to generate things. This kind of the ways you operate to generate idea in the logical ways. I think this is quite different. This is a cultural difference. Anyway.
I mean, I cannot speak so much on the, let's say, Chinese thinking, philosophy, etc. In terms of its, I mean, I have some intuitive feelings about being married to a Chinese woman. Different frames of mind, etc. But But I want to reflect a little bit, you know, how our thinking in the global modern world is actually the intersection of multiple traditions in many ways. And even if you say European, there are multiple strands which had to come together, and there's a learning process. So it's not to think that these are isolated, separate. I think the Chinese contribution would come in when they're appropriate and absorb and add that nuance, that twist, that next step on a larger convergent tradition. So just, I mean, this going on, of course, for centuries with the ancient Greece and the different schools there, already quite diverse. But let's say just focus in on what happened in modernity, in the let's say 17th, 18th, 19th century in terms of philosophy, European philosophy. First of all, there was, of course, the absorption of ancient Greece philosophy, but then you have different, you know, and you have Latin as a lingua franca in Europe, but then you have the French tradition, and also different trajectories of these societies with a more centralized state and an organizing bureaucracy and kind of clear and rational thinking, rationalism, versus the English empiricism. It also reflects in something which is more kind of contingent and open and not top-down. You have common law rather than edicts, etc. And then the Germans, so something like Kant then brings in, you know, it has a French tradition, and Christian Wolff, and then brings in Hume, and you know, proto-evolutionary thinking, and generates something out of this. The German element, Hegel, is deep historicism, more collective project. So they bring in, I mean, it's been very productive and quite different. And in the end, there is some kind of convergence, actually, in the 20th century of these. There were these separate worlds, the Anglophone, Anglo-Saxon, analytic philosophy versus the kind of hermeneutic German trajectory, the French. And there's some kind of convergence, and that's the way it could be. And then there could be branching off. So it's not uniform, and I think that by the way, the German philosophy was also, in the 19th century, the historicism and historical learning, philology, they went into ancient Persian language, Zoroastrianism, that was becoming influential. There was a deep knowledge of some of those traditions and concepts. They knew ancient Greek, they knew kind of ancient Persian, Sanskrit, and that bleeds into figures. You know, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, etc. So I think that's the way forward. I mean, it's quite deep, and you can kind of live and breathe this and join this without having to go back through all these texts yourself. You just absorb it by kind of osmosis, because these are kind of these evolved, converged trajectories. So I would just invite the Chinese intellectual world to join this, or do, you know, if there is something which twists and things to add, it will show up. It will show up in the next stage, how you can do better versions of the 21st century world. Maybe there is, I don't know why DeepSeek is more powerful than other AI systems. Maybe there is something. That's the way you come in. You through this kind of global competition. I wouldn't kind of fetishize and say, well, you are Chinese, therefore you have to, you know, stay in your lane. No way, absolutely not. I'm a German, but I live in England, and I was first falling in love with the Anglo-Saxon analytic philosophy, and then a German, Austrian, Wittgenstein came and injected 2 new stages in that, etc. So we should be cosmopolitan in this, I believe, but I'm sure there's something which will come through, but it's not a separate trajectory. It's kind of one global trajectory by now.
Good. I think that's Patrik. Yes. Thank you. Also, I think Patrik over the years gave strongly his, like what he mentioned about this kind of his understanding of the Eastern Western culture. Very well.
I think the Germans have this thing, like out of Kant, Hegel. I mean, the kind of big convergent synthesis. If you look at the work of somebody like Habermas, who just passed away at 96 years old, and his huge career, he brought in the speech act theory, in combining with hermeneutics, Marxism. He was in a dialogue with Luhmann, who brought in second order cybernetics and brought all the U.S. Let's say organizational theory, Herbert Simon, and also influenced by complexity theory and the biology of cognition, etc., etc. So that is very productive, very fundamental to bring these things into some kind of permanent interaction, combustions, and reading and competitive driving, because it's wonderful the way this is in this fantastic, amazing AI explosion, how the philosophers are, well, all these teams are deeply eager to suck philosophers into their agendas, because they have things, they need to go novel ways, they need new kind of approaches, new ideas to break through. And I think it's an exciting moment for philosophy, and I'm very curious. And what saddens me a little bit, that the US trying to kind of not allow this kind of confluence and try to keep these things separate. It's not the way forward.
I think time is almost up. I would like to invite our the leading professor in our HTC program, Professor Luan, to give some comments.
Thank you for a wonderful afternoon, and I think it's too complicated for me to follow, but thank you very much. And first, thanks for Professor Ol, his last question to Professor Schumacher. I'm wondering what you are talking and discussing, because in the Chinese context, in China, so what you are talking for us, I think, still very Western, but since you have been here for many years, many times, so I'm just wondering what you imply to this to your discussion. Yeah.
I mean,
I get something from your last
look, I think Europe, unfortunately, is mature, is cautious, is not adventurous. It's slowed down too much, and that's why you have in China has been this fantastic soaring and society, bringing millions of people along and reaching to the top of many industries, creative research. It's fantastic. So with that world of opportunity, and we're so lucky that we can participate, and we're very popular here. And we're not a typical European company. Zaha is an Iraqi woman. We have people from 60 nations, and we're exploring the world and trying to embed ourselves into the dynamics of different cities. And so we just find openness and curiosity and entrepreneurship and boldness and ambition and hard work and tenacity. I mean, that's very kind of thrilling. I think in Europe that was we had this in the 60s and 70s, and 80s, maybe 90s, but we have lost a little bit our neck. We've lost a little bit our way, and I think so. And I hope this continues in China for long. And of course, there are new countries also coming up. You're discovering India and who are, let's say, about 25 years behind China. And everybody should participate in this. Now, China is a great, we're developing Africa now, and we are going in with the Chinese firms, with, because they have the competency and boldness, and so we want to discover, Africa together with the Chinese.
Great.
Understand what your suggestion. Yeah, and actually, I think from late 80s in China, we experienced in architecture, my generation follow what you have talked about, how to criticize the classical order hierarchy, and also criticize the modernism with the theories of Christoph Alexander. A city is not a tree, and then a collage city, and then Venturi's complexity and contradiction, etc. So I think it's all these maybe not so new for Western world, but so
No.
what I think you're talking about here just refers to
I mean,
to China.
it's wonderful that you know all these references, and so you're part of a global architectural theory trajectory, and it's nice that I hear that echoing, and I think you read my works, we're building on that, as well as Philip's works, etc. What's the next stage? But we're directly building on the insights of that. All of the references you mean are extremely important, not only Christoph Alexander, but of course Venturi, complexity and contradiction, of course Colin Rowland, phenomenal transparency, and many more. So I think that's very important,
We have more.
and the problem is why I said the end of architecture, because when we talk only about poverty and climate, we don't talk about this. I'm talking about the semiological projects, and a phenomenological project, as well as the organization. So that's very beautiful, I mean, to hear, and it's very comforting to hear. And every student should know all these references. And the problem is that this is not happening. That's why I call it the end of architecture, because universities are not teaching this. And but that's very important.
I'm not.
Maybe I
not
don't know where
really
I mean,
agree.
maybe here, maybe in Tongji.
Yeah,
So I think it's very very nice to hear that, and very important. And please read my works where you will be well prepared to understand them, because what I'm doing is building on that very much. And all my discourse is deeply embedded in the history of architecture and architectural theory. So it's not only, well, these are key references, but I'm also talking about, Le Corbusier and Otto Wagner and what came in Zemper, and go back. It goes back. There's a whole lineage. Nothing comes from nothing, and we need to realize you can't. What we know and achieve, and we have a deep kind of hundreds of years of reflective engagement with the built environment, and we need to keep learning and keep building on the shoulder of these giants, let's say. And that's very important. You can't reinvent it, from scratch within a decade or something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just a few more. I just mentioned that not only these theories criticize modernism, but at the same time we also have many, I think, including Zaha Hadid came to us. I was the first time came to China to Tongji. I was a translator for her. I did very bad because I couldn't follow her. But I mean, at the same time, just as we also pay much attention to the innovation and the mutation in the Western world. So in some way, it's hard to relate all things together.
I mean,
but,
of course.
But your lecture is very helpful for me to understand.
I mean, in China, I mean, this thrilling the development. Of course, if you go breakneck, if you go fast, if you, there are many mistakes made, many opportunities lost, and it's nice to see in China now you kind of reached a level of generalized affluence, infrastructure build out, and city expansion. You're slowing down, be a bit more conscientious, a bit more reflective, So I think the next stage will be, you can start critiquing some of the mistakes we made. I'm not maybe including the mistakes we make. I mean, that's the balance to be struck. The breakneck speed is still very, very fast, but we can also be fast and good, because we have a lot of reflection, decades of reflection, refinement, we're talking about now third generation projects in China, have a different quality, a different anticipation, a bit more consideration. But it can't be too fast, but we can now be, you know, your work is wonderful and sophisticated and contextual and conscientious and so on and so forth. We can do it fast, and we need to discourse and critique, and we need to feel the pressure of the colleagues, critical questions. I mean, for me it's important to come back and I didn't show now the current work, but to show the work, to present it, and know that I will be invited and I will have to explain it, not just, you know, just doing what we're doing fast, and the only echo is Instagram posts. That's not interesting to me. So it's very important that the academic kind of discourse is supporting us and critiquing us and keeping us honest and keeping us self-critical.
Yeah, yeah. Just like I like to come this afternoon to hear the dialogue between the philosopher and the architect. That may be the last comment. I appreciated many discussion from a philosopher, Bojanic, professor. Yeah. Just like you mentioned, concept is individual, and program the social, etc. Very, very interesting. From this we can discuss. So, like you also mentioned about project is aggressive, concept individual, but I'm also thinking of concept also from individual and from our cultural background. So from these we can open more discussion. I just thought if you're talking about project aggressive, how you dialogue each other, philosopher with architect, because your design is very, I can see very individual or very creative, yeah, so, okay, maybe. So how you talk each other?
We are trying to be aggressive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Is there still some time for another question? Yes, please. Maybe I just... A speculative question, based on the speculation so far. So I think we have already covered the distinction between Western mindset, Chinese mindset, different space concepts, different kind of philosophy, and different kind of upbringing towards an architectural professional stance. I think that's we covered. But I think it's also fair to say that there is some overlap. So you can have Immanuel Kant, and you can think about Confucius, and they are clearly from different worlds, but they have a certain similar rigor that reminds me very much about what Patrik Schumacher mentioned in terms of projecting a world always in the same manner, right? So you have enclosure, subdividing, nesting, etc., etc. So, and I think if I think about the majority of Chinese projects compared to the majority of the Western project, there's a similar kind of approach, a similar kind of sequence of steps to organize the space in order to control, right? To be sure that the program fits the space. And since you have been opening the question about the emancipation of architecture, what happens if you can start brushing rather than only using the ruler, right? So what in the Chinese context, what would happen in Chinese urban projects, for instance, or in landmark buildings in China that starts with the brush rather than with a spatial hierarchy, so to speak. So is there room to maneuver in China to brush? That's my speculative question, because I think that's a similar challenge here as well. And of course you can have projects by Zaha Hadid architects in China, you know, then maybe there is some brushing on a specific plot of land, and maybe there are 10 projects or 20, but these are only limited to the Zaha Hadid projects. But is there a lesson to learn from the approach of this architecture office that could be applied in a more general way in China? It's a speculation.
It's a good challenge.
I think I need to catch a flight, so sorry for that. I should close this wonderful panel discussion. Actually, 3 hours is just a moment to fly so soon. But it's a really great honor. I think we need more discussion. I think, like Patrik Schumacher mentioned, this kind of European culture, Anglo-Saxon culture, actually have a special, very, very strong systematic philosophy and knowledge system. You can imagine like the Zaha office leading by a philosopher, right? He is so knowledgeable and also a great thinker to leading the whole army. Actually, it's like over the years, they quite successful to transfer this kind of very strong conceptual design thinking all the way to different scenarios around the whole world, including China. They have super successful projects, including the airport in Beijing, including other projects, right, in China. So I think we're lucky to, in the next few years, also invite Pat Schumacher as a PhD advisor here in Tongji, and also looking forward to leading some special research on the future meta-universe spatial intelligence research. We want to establish a new lab here. And also send invitation, we have a Digital Future workshop will be happening from the end of June to the beginning of July. That's a yearly event. Also looking forward, maybe Zaha Code or the Zaha Beijing could send some like expertise coming to Shanghai to experience and leading such kind of discussion, including the workshop culture we established together over the years. I think we'll be lucky to have Patrik here, and also today we the first time know Pedro. I think very deep thinker on the fundamental question mentioned about the concept. I think the project and also the conject. I think that is very very interesting. Still, we need time to understand and think about that. So it's really good honor for all of us. If you have any question, you're also welcome to discuss after the lecture. So thanks for coming, and let's give another applause to the both specialists. Yeah, thank you.
So you're moving on back to Beijing? Thanks for coming. Yeah, you take him up. Okay.
So also looking forward if you Zaha Code or your office.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we should look at that. I want to look at the VR lab now with Snow, and I heard you will do your own VR lab as well.
Yes, we have something.
Oh, yeah.
You can talk to his team and look at that. Also. I
Okay.
don't know if Sharjah have time this summer.
Let's see. The school, we're doing the school, me and Rahim and Westkind and